Okay. Thank you guys so much for coming today. It's a really important topic for me, Criminal Justice Day and just everything relating to that. If anyone wants to vent or anything like that, that's kind of what I wanted to do today, while also getting a baseline for what we're talking about. So providing like some informational videos as well. I think it's really important to talk about criminal justice, especially like during an election, thinking about both candidates and how they approach that issue. Um, and it's an issue that really affects, the Black community. We see the way systemic racism still occur in the criminal justice system. So I really wanted to shed a light on that today. So today we just have Z speaking, and she'll say a little bit on the school to prison pipeline, and then she got this awesome video from Dr. O, who was actually a guest speaker once before, so he's an expert on all of these issues. And then we have Reggie, who's going to talk about the criminal justice system effects on LGBTQ youth. And then I will end with talking about death row and restorative justice. So let's go ahead. Angie, if you're ready.
Yeah, I just wanted to give like a little introduction before we start the video. I do have my notes right here, so that's why I keep looking to the side because I got anxiety, so I can't just talk off the top of my head. And so, the school to prison pipeline refers to the troubling trend where disciplinary measures in schools, particularly those that rely on suspension, expulsion, and law enforcement involvement, that push students, especially those from marginalized communities, i.e., Black, Hispanic kids, and low income students, out of the educational environment and into the juvenile criminal justice system. This often works by factors such as kind of socioeconomic factors such as low income students coming from unstable homes, academic disengagement. So if you take students out of educational communities, they're not going to want to come back and perform those educational opportunities because now they feel like they're in an unsafe place and nobody really is trying to help them succeed. Also, law enforcement involvement. They're trying to increase law enforcement in K through 12 schools, which a lot of people who come from low income communities do feel some sort of feeling about having law enforcement inside schools because they don't come from a community where law enforcement is a presence that actually helps them and actually worsens their opportunities in life. Also, sorry, disciplinary policies. So most of these are just about harsh policies that can lead to suspension, expulsion, that can often be helped with inside schools that can offer counseling and also mediation with the students, but they go straight to expulsion and suspension of students, especially students of color. I also want to bring up disabilities was kind of the one that also popped up as well. That didn't never run through my head. Obviously, like I should have like kind of put into expect like perspective that disabilities is a big one as well, but we just have such a disparity with race and gender within our school system that I didn't take into account that disabilities is another factor that falls into the school to prison pipeline. But I did also have a video, so I won't be up here talking for like 10-15 minutes, that kind of explains the school to prison pipeline. And actually one of the speakers is a person who was kind of affected in the school to prison pipeline, and he kind of talks about like his experience and then how he overcame that. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Z. I
Mm-hmm.
will do the share thing. You guys know I'd be struggling, so let's just hope this works. Oh, okay. I think I need to like share my sound somehow because that seemed to happen last time. Was that up here maybe? Yes, I remembered. We're making progress. Thumbs up if you guys can hear it. Still loading. What happened? Oh, here we go. Oh, I don't even hear anything. Does it start off quiet, Z? Or no? Okay.
Okay, then there should be some music right here. Is your volume turned up?
Yes, you can't hear it?
No, I can't.
Um, oh, do I need to do which one do I do, guys? I'm not a techie girl. Anyone? Mono or stereo? High fidelity? I'm gonna try that one. Go with it.
There we go.
Well, I think it's a crisis, Ms. Roberts. I've been telling churches and I've been trying to advocate that what we're dealing with when we talk about lives impacted by crime and incarceration is a social crisis in America.
Anything that has a tendency to push our most vulnerable students into the criminal justice system rather than achieve their full potential is the school to prison pipeline system that we have in this country.
To me, the meaning means being where a child is targeted or they're not doing what they're supposed to do and they're just giving up on, and no one's there to support them or support their needs or concerns, and they have no help, no guidance. So when they don't have that guidance, they're just left to dry to figure life out, and therefore usually bad things start to happen once that happens, and there's just no turning back.
A lot of people don't have like an inside view to like imprisonment or incarceration. They know it's a bad place, but they give it a positive look.
Spin.
Yeah, they give it a positive
Absolutely.
spin. Yeah, they give it a positive spin.
Yeah.
And it's like more people are in and out,
Right.
in and out constantly.
And the school to prison pipeline really is just a system in which policies are created for youth, specifically youth of color. Those are the ones that are being affected the most, are being imprisoned, being disciplined in a way that does not equate for the task or the wrong that they did. The punishment just does not add up. When you think about, for me, I've been thinking about the 13th Amendment and how the 13th Amendment shows up. I believe the 13th Amendment is truly a loophole.
But what was happening in the Federal Bureau of Prisons and state prisons as well was overcrowding. Where in state prisons, the issue was overcrowding. In the Federal Bureau of Prisons, it was overcrowding. Now, why? Because of the laws of the late 70s and 80s, where you just was locking up so many people. And then 20 or 30 years later, you see the results of that mass incarceration from a prison perspective, which we call overcrowding. So what happened is starting to move toward privatization of prisons, where the public sector was coming to offer what we call prison support by building private prisons.
Right.
And thus, that's when it was introduced to me about the school to prison, because private prisons were for profit.
Yes.
And thus, the whole concept was something I always struggled with as a chaplain, because I never thought we would have private prisons for profit. And thus, to make money, you got to have people in these prisons.
I remember as a teacher, just again, I felt the distinct impact. I was teaching in a prison when I was teaching in public schools in Manhattan, where again the metal detector, the pat down, the patrolling of the officers, the searching of the lockers, all of this really was kind of a very intentional theater to create a very carceral, criminal kind of environment. And you don't get that impression at all when you're teaching at the task school, you're teaching at these NIS, independent, public schools that are well funded. You don't get that sense at all in the culture. So that's the first thing that kind of pops out, that we're priming our youth to basically assume a role of criminality before they actually are criminalized with a conviction. So by the time that it actually happens, this almost seems to be a complete inevitable outcome.
So my story was when I was like 19, on the verge of being 20, hanging around with a specific group of friends, you know, being influenced by the wrong crowd. Hanging out with that group of friends led me to a decision to rob a store. So during that altercation, I didn't get away with anything. I tried to run away, but I ended up getting shot though. And I got in the car, the getaway car. He took me back to his house, dragged me out of the car, left me on the side of the road, called the ambulance and the police, and drove off.
Wow.
So I got locked up and went to jail in April 8th, 2018, and I came home February 23rd, left last year. So roughly about, 4 years and 10 months? So that's like right there, if I...
Sorry.
You're good.
No, I'm...
You're good.
If you look at the stats in terms of how minorities are impacted, and they represent the numbers that's represented that's incarcerated, which are very disproportionate to the population, statistics of the population of minority, you have to raise the question why. Historically, we know the history of America.
Absolutely.
And it has a racist kind of history through slavery. Here we are in the 21st century now, and we're still trying to right a lot of the wrongs that are part of our society when it comes to crime and incarceration. And one thing you got to keep in mind, because this nation has practiced mass incarceration, especially in the 70s and the 80s, with the 3 strikes and you're out, these laws that begin to just, the way to deal with crime is to just lock people up. And my experience over the years is that there are some violent people who need to be incarcerated. But as a chaplain on the inside, working with people personally, working with their families, working with their situations from a pastoral care perspective, you learn that everybody is not a career criminal.
Absolutely.
And everybody doesn't need to be incarcerated to pay whatever price they need to pay for whatever law they broke.
Do you know that there are more police resource officers in schools than counselors?
Which is sad, because again, you're setting them up to say, hey, once you're in trouble, you're going here. And we all know, especially in high school, once you're a certain age, it's not just getting suspended. You're getting a record. You're going downtown. Your parents are coming to pick you up from the jail, not from school. So it's like you're setting them up for failure. Like, once it starts, it starts. It's really usually no going back from that. Unless you have a strong support system that's there to support you to say, hey, let's go down this direction. Let's do something different. So I just feel like they're there to set them up for failure.
They assume in many ways as impressionable children of tender years, the expectations of their educators and administrators and school resource officers around them. As in the same way that in more affluent schools, they assume the expectations that are high expectations of the teachers, the school administrators, and officers that are not really there. But they have a different message conveyed to them daily that they are the cream of the crop and the best of the best. Lessons and messages get conveyed day in, day out, and it seeps into the subconscious, and it affects the life potential of the individual.
Can you share with me an experience that occurred in school that you think was really setting your brother up for failure?
So he was always the one that had to keep an eye on, but he's always the one that wanted to fight as well. So they just knew that from year to year to year. I felt like they put that target on his back from day one, from coming from middle school to high school, which we thought would be maybe a start over for him, but it really wasn't. It was, he still had that target on his back. They knew, hey, this is the guy we're going to look out for. If he does anything wrong, hey, he needs to be sent to the office. He needs to do this, this, and this. So it's like any little thing that he did, it was a major issue,
Right.
which I don't feel was ever fair.
In many ways, it feels like his learning experience and his childhood was taken away from him. And the option to become better, the option to become a leader, the option to become whatever he wanted to be in life was taken from him.
Yeah, it was taken from him because, again, we can support as a family, but if you don't have that support out in the world, then you're still left because you don't have any guidance. So we tried to lead him to the right way and down the right path, but eventually it led into the streets, and now he's in jail for things that he did. So it just leads to bigger issues when you don't have that. When they started in school, it just leads to bigger issues.
You're now out, obviously. How has finding work, finding an apartment, finding a car, like how has that worked out for you?
It's not easy, but I feel like being that type of mindset I have, like failure is just not an option. Like whatever goal I have set for that time period, like that's just what it is. So that's what I try to shoot for, and I just keep going until it happens. But if you don't have that type of mindset, you just come out here thinking something's gonna drop in your lap, which is not. Where you have to be willing to start somewhere too. Like for example, like my first job was at Popeyes. That's who was willing to give me an opportunity. Like
Right.
the GM, I sat down and talked to him. I told him my story. I told him everything. I told him what was going on. He was like, I'm gonna give you a shot. And I went in there and I did what I was supposed to do. And then when I found something better, like I just keep, like every time I leave a job, I make sure I'm upgrading, I'm elevating. That's what I would do. Like I try to stay consistent, like stay focused to whatever I'm trying to do in that time period.
All right. Thanks so much for sharing that, Z. I know also 13. I don't know if that's still on Netflix. I know you guys remember that one when they dropped it, and it also goes through like the history of school to prison pipeline. But I think that video tackled so many like important issues. Like for instance, labeling. I think that's a big thing when it comes to like these criminal justice issues. Like that's what we do in our prison system. It's what people do in schools. Like they put a label on you and they want you to fall into that label and repeat the cycle. So I really liked that video and how they showed all the statistics and everything. Also touched on restorative justice, which we're going to be talking about later, which I really think is a good way to get to the root of the issue and stop like repeating cycles, which they clearly want us to do with how the prison system is set up. But did anyone have anything they wanted to add to that? Genesis, I don't know if you're free, but the video also reminded me of but just your experiences in school with like, you know, I don't know if it was like a security guard they had there or who it was, but them just like constantly putting a target on your back. She went to a school in Arlington, so predominantly white area, scary area for Black people. But yeah, Genesis, did you have any little comment you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, so you guys hear me okay, right? I'm in the car. I'm so sorry, but okay. Yeah, so when I went to school in Arlington, I went there from I went for like pre-elementary to kindergarten to first, second, and third grade. I moved out after third to Marysville. But in Arlington, as like a third grader, I had already been at the school. I was at President's Elementary in Arlington for like 2 years, 3 years. And it wasn't even my teacher that worked there at the time. It was a substitute teacher that was subbing for her while she was like on maternity leave. But anyhow, she basically, I guess, saw me as a very minuscule child. Like, this stuff starts so early in the school district. Like, I was literally a third grader, barely 9 years old, and was seen as a threat to this woman. And she refused to help me on any sort of schoolwork. And I wasn't used to this. I wasn't used to a faculty member refusing to help me and helping literally everybody else in the class on like basic things like schoolwork. And so, like, when she would refuse to, after a while, I finally like acted out in a sense. So in the story, I flipped a desk, which, in some cases is considered like, okay, like that's not appropriate to do in situations. But considering how I was being treated for months and months by this woman, like it pushed me to a point where I was like, you're not listening to me. I feel very unheard. And as a child, you don't know how to regulate those emotions. And so I, reacted rather than responded. And then how they responded to me was pulling a security guard and pushing me to the ground as a 9-year-old. And then putting me in like isolation, like in school suspension for the remainder of the year. And like, it's just this idea where when they do things like that, they're like basically confirming these ideas we have of ourselves in our head, right? So like, I'm not capable, I'm not strong, I'm not worthy of learning the same knowledge as these other students. Like, that's what they do. And what's crazy, considering also my experience, like going to school in Arlington, is a lot of the other color students were in like special education classes. And the only reason I wasn't is because my mother would have been like, excuse me, like she's not, these other kids didn't have those same resources. And so like, even though they didn't try to like push me into the special needs class, they still treated me very poorly in the regular class and made me feel as if I was doing something wrong, when in reality, the teacher had some sort of racism or bias in her that made me feel as if I was incapable or not worthy of her being able to like support me in basic like knowledge, like these skills that you're required to teach to like children. I felt very isolated and like I couldn't speak up to how I was being treated. And it just solidified this feeling of not feeling very welcome in the area that I had grown up in. And it just is really sad to see that, like, for me, at least, it was like third grade, and that's so young. And it just continues like in school systems, and it gets worse and worse. And it makes people feel as if this is all I have and this is all I'm going to ever be. So I can never strive for anything more. So yeah, just my experience is being a third grader and being ridiculed for something ridiculous.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Genesis. I think a lot of students of color can relate to that experience. If you went to a predominantly white school, it's kind of a familiar experience. And I just also wanted to bring up the fact that I know there's a lot of like gun issues happening right now in the world because of the climate we live in. And a new reoccurring theme is, to protect the kids, like let's bring in more police to the school, like let's bring in guns. And I guess I understand that we need to tackle this issue. I just, from a person of color perspective, like that can make students of color feel more in danger in a sense. And I can just see it being used and abused towards like students of color. So I think all of these things are things that we have to think about, like just thinking of it from a holistic perspective when we're trying to come up with these solutions and getting everybody's perspective on it. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to add on the topic of school to prison pipeline or anything relating to that? Yes, Trey, go ahead.
Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, it's a little quiet, but we could hear.
So I'm usually do this on my phone, but I'm using my laptop today. So I'm trying to figure out new technology a bit. Anyways, hello, nice to see all of y'all again. Hi, Bernice. I apologize because last time I was supposed to be here, and the devil works hard, but Georgia Power Company works harder, and I lost my power. So my power was out, and it was a whole mess. So I'm very glad to be here today, and I'm very excited on the topic because I am working in education in Atlanta with a lot of Black and Brown children. So I'm able to see some of this stuff with the school to prison pipeline firsthand. And I definitely have had some experiences with these kids and how they're treated and just their environments. So I've had the privilege of working in very different settings. So I worked in some of the nicer schools. I worked in some of the more lower end schools. And what I can say is in the video, I can't remember the names, I apologize, but I believe it's the lady with the shorter haircut. And she was saying how these kids, they need a support system. And a lot of these kids that come into school, and you can tell they're not getting the support from, and it starts at home as well. But a good way to compare is to generational trauma. So if your parents, they didn't experience something, or if they experienced something or whatever, you either can rectify that behavior or you can feed into the behavior, and et cetera, et cetera. The same thing works at school. Um, these kids, they're coming into these schools from a certain environment. These teachers, a lot of the time, are working in these schools from a certain environment, and they can either rectify what they're seeing or they can kind of feed into it and contribute to the problem. Like just an example, I was working in 4th grade, and this little boy, he got in an argument about something. It was really foolish, real, you know how kids can be, just be like, what are y'all talking about? But he took it to the point to where he told, basically in this terminology, that he basically implied that he was going to kill this little boy, shoot him dead, put him 10 feet under. Was part of what he said. And I took him out the classroom, and I was like, in teacher words, what the hell is wrong with you? like why would you say that? And just from the conversation that I had with him, it seemed like, and I've had enough experience with this boy. I know that his friends, they all talking about, they had a conversation earlier about how their cousin runs whatever, these, these street gangs and these environments. So he's telling me all of this, and I'm like, what do you have? The boy says something about his father. And I asked him, I'm like, what, do you have a father? And he's like, no. And so I'm just like, okay. And, I gave him some encouraging words, but it's also like, and actually later that day, it wasn't him, but it's his friend that in that conversation where they were having that talk about the friends running, the cousins or whatever running the streets. So his friend later that day got in a fight, and I heard teachers talking about it. The teacher who saw it firsthand, and they said they suspended both the little boy and the boy he got in a fight with, and he actually got a longer punishment. And when I asked what the fight was about, it was because the boy he punched stepped on the back of his shoe. And I'm just like, was that really good? The boy, I think it was like a 5-day suspension. I'm like, this boy is suspended for this 4th grade child is suspended for 5 days over, to me, a playground scuffle. And so when you think about it, these kids, when the Black and brown children are 3 times more likely to be, what's the word? Targeted, to be discriminated against in these schools, and they don't have the support system to where you're kind of feeding into this, and they're coming home from a certain environment, and then they're going to school, and you're basically treating them like how they are meant to be treated. That's why the school is designed to be, and you're not working outside of those systems. It really makes you think about, okay, the problem is a lot bigger than what you're just seeing face value, and it needs to go into deeper. So I'm really excited, because one of my solutions, I had a similar conversation earlier, because now I'm working in the special needs classroom, and that's also another topic that I would like to bring up at some point. But because the way they do those special needs kids is just Lord. But restorative justice was one of the solutions that I had to this issue. So I'm very excited about that. But yeah, it just goes to show that I've had experiences. I really like being an educator, because you can see these things firsthand. And even though my specific position, I don't get paid a lot, it's one of those things where I feel like I need to be there. I need to do what I need to do, because some of these kids, and then I'm glad that I can connect with these kids, even if I'm only there for a couple days or whatever the case may be. Sometimes I don't see the same group of kids for another few weeks, but I'm glad to have these experiences, because I feel like I'm making some type of impact on them, and I hope I hope I'm doing the job that I'm supposed to do to prevent this, the future that seems like it's already been kind of planned out for them before they even get a chance to figure out what they want to do in life. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's just kind of what I wanted to say on that topic.
Thank you so much, Trey. Yeah, you definitely are making a difference, because I mean, obviously someone like you is going to look at these kids not just like as troublemakers and like, you know, as a whole human being. And so that's so cool to hear about your experiences. And I just know how a great teacher can really change your life. Like, that's why I even went to the career path I went to, you know. So thank you so much for that work and for sharing your perspective. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to add on this topic before we move to Reggie? Yes, Genesis.
I wanted to add, like, I know how you mentioned the part about like it starts in the home, and like something I've been thinking about a lot recently is like how people of color that have children, right, are instilled with these ideas of not feeling very like capable or like able in this like world that we've established, where they in the school system are already being told that they're not strong, they're not capable, whatever. And so now they become parents and they don't know how to instill the capabilities into their children. So it's like like as we said before, it's a generational thing. Over the years, they don't know how to get their kids to understand, like, no, you're worth it. So it starts at home and trying to instill those, you know, those confidences into them. But then if they go to school and the educators are also hammering in that they're dumb or they're not smart or they're not capable, it's creating this endless cycle of like just unhappiness and like just feeling like not worth it, and like our self-worth depletes because we continuously are in this endless cycle of not feeling like enough. And it does very much start at home, but it's hard when you've never been taught those things yourself because it's been happening for decades and years and years and years and such.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's actually like a term, it's called imposter syndrome. I just learned about that about 2 years ago in Dr. O's class. Shout out to him. He's really like a homeboy now, instead of a professor to me. But we were talking about how like that's instilled in a lot of minorities, and that's how like retention rates go high, especially for Black individuals, because that imposter syndrome does take over us. And it is like really hard for us to get over that mindset. Like, I don't feel like I'm supposed to be here. I feel like everybody else is way more smarter than me, or in a position where they can be here and I can't. And so like, yeah, that is really definitely a problem, because I know that I've dealt with it, and maybe there's other Black people in here who have felt like the same. And so yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Yes, thank you guys so much. Mom, you had something to add?
Yeah, I mean, so many things in my head right now, so I'm just gonna try to focus on 2 or 3. You know how my brain is. But just all indicative of the fact that the system is not broken. It is designed to keep Black men in prison, therefore breaking up the Black family. So not having that male person in the home to help also creates some of this generational repeat. And it's designed that way. So it's all connected in everything that is lived out every day, from the moment you wake up to the moment you walk out the door. It's designed for you to fail. So handling Black, especially young Black men and women in schools as criminals, adult criminals, every time something happens, but then when a white person does it, it's, oh, they need help. They had, a mental breakdown, versus being treated like a criminal. So they get counseling and resources versus let's kick you out of school. So now you have a learning disability and now you're in a special ed class when you get back into school. It's just another way for them to segregate and keep everybody separate. So just wanted to kind of bring that out and just make sure everybody understands it is not a broken system. It is actually designed this way, and it is all connected.
Period. Literally, like everything agreed, Mom. Thank you so much for adding that. And it looks like Genesis has another.
Yeah, I just had an example of what Auntie was saying. I felt like with the example of like in school systems, when a Black student or a person like a student of color did something and then a white student did it. A prime example of that is there was a student at my school who wore a do-rag, and he was a Black man who was literally protecting his hairstyle, was threatened with suspension or expulsion, and was like, you need to take that off, it's going to cause issues. And when he refused, he got like kicked off the campus and was told like, you can't come back. But then we have this like lip sync like music video where they would match up a bunch of songs, and a lot of the white football team had do-rags on, but because it was gold and it was school spirit, it was allowed. And it was just like a very visual representation of how they see us in school, and how a white athlete, a student that's making money and that looks shiny and what people want to see and what they want to put their money in is worth it, and they can do whatever they want. But a student of color who, you know, maybe isn't involved in as many school activities and is just focusing on their studies or whatever, wears the do-rag for the actual purpose of it and gets suspended from school. It makes no sense. And exactly like you said, Auntie, it's designed that way. It's designed to show a message, and it creates other students to look at it that way, being like, oh, Tommy can wear it, but when Daquan wears it, it's a fucking racial, like, it's representative of gangs and such like that, and it's really disappointing to see.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You can see it a lot. I feel like in the Marysville School District as well, because my brother, he started in the Mariner High School, and then he transferred to a Marysville school. And it was like as soon as he transferred, so it would be like a better experience. But as soon as he transferred, he was just like targeted and targeted because, he's a Black man with dreads, and like the security was constantly just like on him more than other people. And so that was scary for me and my mom to see. Like we for a while thought like he could fall into like the system because of how he was being targeted above other students. So it's just a really scary thing that Black families have to face, because it is like we have to go up against all the odds, and we really do have to do so much work in our own homes to make sure that, our family self-worth is there, because everything else in society is trying to tell us that it's not. So yes, thank you so much for everyone sharing those perspectives. And I think now we can go ahead and move on to Reggie's topic if you're ready, Reggie.
What's up, y'all? Yeah, really, really beautiful stuff. All the messages that you guys just said, and just information was really stimulating. The thing is, a lot of what my topic was like almost kind of like riding the coattails of that. I didn't realize. But I mean, it's from the perspective of being within the detainment system, so the juvenile detainment. So, well, a little bit background of me. Sorry if you can't see me. Nope. Hold on. Cut the car on. Technical difficulties, y'all. My bad. All right, cool. So, yeah, a little bit of background. Like, I'm a gay man. I've been myself authentically ever since I can remember. So, queer issues are just something that's really, really impactful to me. I look at it like it's just the best way to live if you're just trying to be authentically yourself, no matter what specific thing you may or may not be. And so when you go down to youth, a lot of queer and LGBTQ, representing individuals, the system has failed them, in so many different shapes, ways, and forms. When it comes down to it, there is a staggering amount of kids that usually represent the LGBTQ community that are within the detainment system, the juvenile detainment system, like detention centers, rehabilitation centers, whether it's foster, and all of that has threading to our legal justice system that has inevitably failed them in so many different shapes and forms. So within it, I got an opportunity to see, looking from my past experience, how it really, really was bad in comparison to how other kids may or may not have to go through that. Because, there's other kids that are on the streets, for example, and, they'll get placed in foster care, they'll get placed in group homes, they'll get placed in all these different areas that are trying to propel kids to get off of a bad path. But when it comes to queer kids, it's usually always, brought up into a much bigger situation in regards to trying to set them up for failure. And then once detained, they're in the detainment system. Um, they're denied access to mental health, which it's no secret that queer kids usually are the ones that have at least been kicked out of homes are usually susceptible to mental health issues, have been abused, have been experienced all types of assaults and etc. So those issues are unheard or untended to within the legal system. um, when you're in the juvenile system, you're supposed to offer education. So a lot of the queer LGBTQ representatives and stuff like that, they don't get that. They don't get that form of knowledge because there's usually always somebody telling them, hey, if you do this, you can uh, cut your sentence faster. If you break the rules, if you essentially trying to just shake them up to keep them in the system for longer. So once they do get old enough, they're 18, 19, whatever the case might be. Now, okay, boom, you've been in the system for however many years. Now you're ready to go to big boy jail, you know? Um, I work part-time, well, now full-time, but as a RBT, a registered behavioral technician. So I work, in academic settings for kids who need, just help bettering their behavior within, school. And so, you get a chance to see a lot of different kids that are going through a lot of different things. I work with kids that like have autism, ADHD, some that have Tourette's, whatever the case might be. And a lot of them, I mean, you walk into a classroom, you know the types of kids that are there. So I usually try and go to something that's a little more common that I understand, and that's usually the queer kids. And yeah, a lot of them are usually written off. I mean, they already have their issues that they're battling, but a lot of them are written off. A lot of them are always caused as the problem or drawn to be some type of a case that is problematic. So yeah, I really had this idea. I had like notes and like little paragraphs of stuff, but I didn't want to get too complicated. But yeah, it was just an open idea kind of conversation that I wanted to start up. If anybody like had experience or knowledge about it, then love to see or hear what you have.
Anybody want to start anything? If not, I will. Okay, I'll start. Well, Reggie, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. I think it's so valuable, and I think it's not talked about enough, especially being, a Black man who is gay, like we have like this stigma in our community, and like I think that needs to end. And so I'm really glad that we're bringing this topic. The only thing I really know about this topic is in college, I did take, I think it was like for a diversity credit, gender studies, and they talked about just like the discrimination that went on in like the LGBTQ community and like just how oppressed they were like by the police and in the justice system, how they were treated. And so I think, it goes hand in hand with like what we're talking about today. And it definitely is a big issue. Like a lot of the people in the LGBTQ community have to live in like, feeling like constant danger, also have to live being written off and like not acknowledged or respected. And so, yeah, I just thank you for bringing this topic, and I want to learn more. I want to learn more. That's why I'm glad you had it today. Genesis has something to add.
I was just gonna say, like, this would be a great topic to have a whole Speak Your Truth meeting on. As much as I believe there is a lot that like the Black community needs to fight for and to support just as Black people in the justice system, in our society, like the systematic racism, like we already have this own like fight that we're fighting. But something else, like you said, Ray, that we should discuss is our like internal colorism, our internal like homophobia that's in our community, and how we will fight for Black lives but not those that are LGBTQ plus community, or if they don't look the part or act the part. And that's something we can definitely dive into, and more on to like how, and some of it's not even our fault. It's just this ideology that we've presented by the society and how we should perceive each other, and how, oh, you're more acceptable as a Black person, but this person over here isn't, and how that's been instilled in us, and not necessarily by choice. Some of it definitely. I really think there are some folks out there that have very sad views, but some of it was just systematic, what you were exposed to and how you receive that information. And I would again agree. I would love to keep learning about this, and like that would be a really cool topic we talked about in the future too.
Yeah, we should definitely bring it back. I will write it down because I always need new topics. So thank you guys so much. Reggie, did you have any more thoughts you wanted to add on the topic? And if anybody else had anything else to add?
Nah. I mean, I pretty much, yeah, I didn't really formulate anything like I didn't do like any source paragraphs, anything like that. It was just kind of like a topic idea that I had in my head. But yeah, thanks for participating, y'all.
Well, I would just like to thank you for bringing it up, Reg, and the work that you're doing with those kids is amazing because it really just takes one person to listen sometimes to really make a difference. And I don't have the statistics, but I know that they're very high. But the statistics for suicide for gay Black men is very, very high. And so there is work that needs to be done in our community. So I thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. Yeah, it's rough. I'm not gonna lie. There's been a lot of times because I'm working with like not only elementary, middle school, and high school, but there's also kids that have kind of graduated and everything. They're just trying to finish up the finalization of like their last forms of credit. Um, so they're old enough to understand how to do certain things and start to slowly induct themselves within the adult lifestyle. Um, but it's just rough, that specific topic in itself, like mental health and suicide and things of that nature. I've had to really go and take it upon myself to make sure the kids are like taken care of, they're understood, they're properly resourced. And it's weird because like within our school systems, a lot of, especially like the Mukilteo, the Snohomish, they don't really have a lot of specific situations and organizations and groups catered to their specific problems. And so I'm here to clock in, you know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna try to get my money on to go home. But then, you don't just go to work, see these kids, and then just kind of go about your day, and you're not supposed to, they told us, at least like as the paraeducators, behavioral technicians, they said just go to work, go home. Don't really build too much of an outside relationship with them. But I mean, I couldn't. A lot of these kids were homeless. So, trying to find ways to source them places that they needed to be. Another example, I mean, I'm not going to say no names because legality, but there was a student that really, really loved drag. And so I knew like a bunch of drag houses and house mothers and house fathers that would have loved, this individual. So, I talked to them, boom, they're running their first couple of drag shows, they're making money, now they're trying to get set up to start doing modeling. So it's stuff like that. Like this job really gave me the opportunity to see like so much of not only what I kind of experienced and like I guess the fears in the academic setting because of me being a gay man, but also just being able to overcome, like if there was somebody there to help you out in terms of like a teacher, educator, whatever, like you just feel like, okay, boom, not only can I be myself, but I have support, which is really, really important. But yeah,
It's powerful.
powerful.
Very. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, Reggie. I think Genesis had another comment to add.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to add to the point of you bringing up like how your administration has spoke to you about how to connect with your students and how that's a very, very sure sign of like how these teachers are not even equipped at the beginning to like be set up to cater to the student's success, right? So going into this, they're like, do not create these relationships. And that even goes furthermore into how the system is so messed up because like everyone's afraid of making these genuine connections and actually supporting each other and lifting each other up because everybody's so focused on their own needs and like what makes them uncomfortable and how if they don't agree with something, they can't just, not be participating in it. They have to comment on it and they have to put their opinion in there. And so instead of having these conversations and teaching teachers how to support their students when these topics come up, they're telling them to just, close the door. Don't talk about it. It's not your place. Which in some cases with parents, of course, like I would see how they wouldn't want their teachers to do that. But if the parents at home are not very accepting or welcoming of what the students are going through, they have no other outlet, especially when the teachers are saying like, oh, let's not talk about that. That's not something we do here. And it's really saddening to see, because I definitely have had some friends in like who didn't have a great home life and came to school and created bonds with teachers and stuff that had to be like very, very service level, because, you know, the way that they tell you to be in school is to not actually have genuine connection, because it may cross a boundary. And yes, obviously, unfortunately, the way the system is flawed, there are cases where cross that boundary cause a lot of harm. But there is limits and stuff, and I feel like you can't even like have just like a friendly connection with students anymore. It's so superficial. It's super just like on the surface of like of basically being like the way that they speak to you about jobs, right? So like you come in, like you said, you clock in, you clock out. There's really nothing to it. But I feel like a lot of teachers will go in because they want to like help people and they want to like have those connections and like actually feel that way. But unfortunately, like we cannot do that no longer, because it can cause all these issues and cause like law issues and such like that. But anyways, I was just wanting to speak on how the teachers are very limited in how they can actually, you know, support these students, because they're not given the resources that they need.
Yes, thank you so much, Genesis. I agree, like, especially for like these marginalized communities, like having that support is so crucial. So I'm all for paying educators more. We should. I mean, their job is literally so vital. Like they're shaping students' minds, and having that mentorship is so important, especially when you have issues going on at home. And especially when you're marginalized in two ways, like, you know, you're Black and you're a part of the LGBTQ community, like, you definitely need that support. You're gonna be beat down even more, like, you know? So I definitely agree with everything you said, Genesis. Reggie, did you have anything else to close us out?
Um, I mean, yeah, yeah, everything you said is like it's true, it's real. Like it's rough when you're in that specific setting. Um, I had thought once we graduated, you know, cliques and stuff like that were done with, right? But nah, like teachers, so there's like, you know, there's the PE teacher, English teacher, you know, the basic teachers for all the specific subjects. You know, they do like cliques, you know, they do a lot of elitism and stuff like that. And so, I mean, if you've been working at a space for like 10, 15 years, yeah, sure. Like this is your cemented spot. You know, can't nobody speak on your microphone? Boom. But at the end of the day, you know, when you have specific like ideas and mentalities towards how things should and shouldn't be, you know, it creates such a problem. You know, you're working with kids, you're working with individuals, you're working with the people that are probably going to be there at the hospital that you're going to need to go to make sure that you aren't going to die. You know what I'm saying? So treat them well. And so what we always have to end up going through, we work with the kids and like we're always taught to like never speak to the parents, never create that sense of rapport with the kids that makes them feel anything um like they can come and hug you, or they can come and, you know, call you if something jumps off. Like me personally, I don't leave any information for them to like call me or contact me, but you know, they got social media. I'm also a nail technician too, so you know me, I'm always plugging my money in. That's just how I got to do. But anyways, for the kids that are like old enough, you know, high school and above, you know, that's how I keep my contact, you know, because otherwise, like a lot of what they're going through is usually like environment. It's usually resource. It's usually just things you can go to a teacher about. You know, you go to a sex ed teacher. What do you think you're gonna go to a sex ed teacher about? Issues involving the things you're going through within your gender or your sex or your whatever the case might be. And a lot of them they can't even begin to go through that kind of stuff because the teachers are just told don't tell kids that form of resource. Just tell them the curriculum, teach them academia, and then once that bell rings, you're done. So yeah, it's rough, but you know, we'll definitely hopefully work towards the future.
Thank you so much for the work you do as well. I had no clue that you were in Actually, no, you told me that. JK, at the game, you told me that. So yes, people like you are definitely needed. Like you're gonna really make someone feel supported just by sharing your experience and like being there for them. So thankful for you. Now I think we'll move on to our last topic of the night, which is death row and restorative justice. I kind of wrote something up too. I'm gonna call it like a journal entry. When all of the Marcel Williams stuff was happening, I kind of wrote some things down as I normally do. That's kind of how I process. I always have processed better through writing. So I figured I think I'll show the video. No, I'll say my thoughts first, then show the video. Because I have a video on like death row and like some statistics and the effects on the Black community. But I really wanted to discuss it because, as we know, there are significant disproportionalities in when it comes to death row. For the Black community, we make up a huge part of it for not being a huge part of the US population, you know? And so knowing this and how often our justice system gets it wrong, plus the fact that it encourages plea deals even for the innocent, because our justice system would literally break down if everyone decided to fight their case at trial. I feel strongly that it's something I would like to work on as my time as an attorney. I don't know if you guys have heard of Innocence Project, but I have heard about it. Actually, I think just last year was the first time, and I actually have a professor that worked on that, and so he's kind of been mentoring me through it as well. But yeah, it's something I do want to tackle because I know it is something that largely affects our community. Um, in school, I'm learning that once your case has been argued and decided, it's almost impossible to get the courts to change their minds about the conviction, even with new evidence. And apparently, even with both the prosecution and the defense agreeing that it should be overturned. That was the case for Marcel Williams. As I'm sure a lot of you know, he had new evidence proving his innocence, plus both the prosecution and the defense saying that he should be released, even the family of the victim saying that he should be released. And yet he was still put to death. Sadly, this is a more common reality for Black individuals in the criminal justice system versus white individuals. And his story was just something that really touched my heart. Like, and a lot of the time I would try to, stay away from too much of this media because it can get me really down. And I'm sure you guys can relate. It can just feel kind of helpless. But I knew I had to, look at the story because this is the reality and this is what I'm going to be tackling like every day in my career. I just wanted to take a moment of silence for Mr. Williams, if you guys are okay with doing that for me. Just a few seconds, because I feel that, it's just sad to see what happened to him and what his family is going through and the harsh reality of everything. So yeah, we'll just take maybe like 1 minute. Okay, thank you guys so much. This was really an issue that was weighing heavy on me, and I'm trying not to get choked up because I think it's something that we can all relate to being afraid of for our families. Like this could easily be my brother, this could easily be, your cousin, your aunt, your dad. Like it's a really, really scary thing for this to be like, your reality and to just have to get used to it. And I'm not going to. That's why I'm choosing the career I am because I don't think it's acceptable for us. And I think that it is time for a change, and I do have hope for that. I know Kamala, she's proposing decriminalizing marijuana, which would change a lot for the Black community because, as we know, a lot of Black males are in prison for marijuana crimes, which is ridiculous because we have it legalized in so many states. So I think when we're voting, we should really take into account like what policies each president is proposing and how that's going to affect our community in real life, you know? So, let's see. I have to admit, sorry, re-entering into the journal entry, I kind of went off script there, but I have to admit, um, hearing so many stories like this can make one go numb after a while. It can make one lose hope, but then I have to remember if I wasn't going to work on these issues, even the small issues for our community, who else would? Not a lot of people want to go into that because it is too much and it is going to be a lot for me, but I know that I can handle it and I know that that's what I was put on this earth to do. I want to make a better world for my baby brother to live in and one day my future kids. I don't want my kids to have to one day grow used to the numbing feeling that we have all grown so familiar with. That's why I'm also considering working specifically doing appeals court, which my teacher told me is an uphill losing battle most of the time because of what I said before about a conviction being pretty set in stone. I've now expanded my horizons to no longer just wanting to be a civil rights attorney, but also a public defense attorney because I see the ways the criminal justice system harms my community even more now that I'm in law school. Like literally what we're talking about in criminal justice is just hard proof of the things that we already know in this community. Some states have eradicated the death penalty, like Washington, for example. I am against the death penalty for these reasons, and I just believe in a world where our criminal justice system is different. For example, the restorative justice topic. This is on the rise in prison reform discussion, and it's actually it's actually used a lot in Native American communities. So it's this approach that aims to repair harm and rebuild relationships rather than simply punishing those responsible. It's based on the idea that the crime is a violation of the people and relationships, and those harms should be included in the justice process. So this is what I mean about like actually getting to the root of the issue, not just the punishment, and then not doing anything about it and, you know, perpetuating that cycle. This is actually trying to get to the root issue. So it can be used in a variety of settings like schools and the criminal justice system. But some of the outcomes of restorative justice include restitution, community service, and victim offender reconciliation. I think our justice system right now is not built to actually heal the wound, as we've been discussing today. Prisons are for profit and people are benefiting from people staying in the cycle. And so that's why I like looking at different approaches like these that would actually fix the issue and not just punish and put a label on someone. And so now I would like to show a video, but before I do, did anybody have anything they wanted to add on the topic of death row or restorative justice? Alrighty, I will share this video. It talks about, oh, Genesis, go ahead. I love when you're here. Can I just say you add so much valuable discussion.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I was trying to find the button again and I got confused. So it took me a minute to put my hand up. But yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I just wanted to add on to this idea of what you were mentioning, it being for profit. The way our justice system runs now is we just need to blame someone. We just need someone to take the fall because it'll take too much time, too much money, too much whatever it is to actually do the work to discover who it is. And it's so sad because, again, it's the cycle. It's a cycle of creating people who just, people will enter the system and be like, you know what? No, I'm going to be different. I'm going to fight for people. I'm going to make sure that justice is restored. But then the people who've been there for a while, who have just accepted the system for what it was, are now encouraging them to go, it's not going to get you anywhere. It's not, so it creates these people who are just doing the same things to innocent people over and over and over again, because to them, it's not worth it. We just need to blame someone, who we just need to cut a check. And I just wanted to add to that and say, like, it is very prevalent. It sucks because I feel like almost anybody you have a discussion with, depending on their views and such, they agree. They're like, everything's a cash grab nowadays, these days. And it's sad that we can all agree on this, but nobody is doing anything to change it. Nobody's doing the work to go, yeah, so why are we just giving them money? Let's stop. Let's stop supporting these systems that are broken and designed, like Andy said, designed this way to put people into these positions and set them up for failure. Yeah, I just wanted to add to that.
Thank you so much. All really good points. And I completely agree. Like, we're so rooted in our ways of punishment. And like last year, we kind of learned like the theories behind the US's reasoning for like the prison system. But it's just startling because no other place in the world addresses things like this. And so you can just kind of see like why they're doing it. Like, there's a reason behind it. The new Jim Crow talks a lot about these issues. It's honestly like become modern day slavery for, the Black population. And I think it's definitely time for a change. And I hope to be a part of working on that. And I hope other people are as well. I know there's a lot of new voices out there proposing new ways of punishment. This is Sorry, I don't know how I did that. This is a video I'm sending you guys because it talks about restorative justice, and she's a scholar on the topic. She also used to be an attorney, and so it's just really interesting hearing her perspective. It talks about like the roots of it, and she talks about statistics on how it works. And so it's just another theory to keep in mind. Like, we don't have to have a system that operates this way, that operates wanting people to fail. Um, and yes, Genesis, another comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add on to that too. I feel like as a society, we forget that we have choice. I'm sick and tired of these legislators saying like that's just how it is. You know who invented it? You know who designed it? People. People who were just like, okay, we feel like this works for us right now. And instead of readjusting our circumstances and seeing what our needs are in our society right now, we're just like, whatever, it worked, old, reliable, but it's not working. It's benefiting them. So as long as it's working for them, they're never, ever, ever going to be like, let's redesign it. And that's the issue. Nobody wants to take accountability. People want to sit in their comfort. Nobody wants to give up their privilege. Nobody wants to give up these things. And that's what's so sad about it too, is like, I try really hard to explain that to like my friends as well, like my friends who are white. And I'm like, listen, I understand like you sitting here being like, yes, of course, like I stand up for these like these beliefs and these rights and like I want to fight for them. But I'm like, yeah, but do you understand what you're sacrificing? Do you understand that when those things happen, that means you are at the same level as me? And maybe there are some things that you didn't realize that you were benefiting off of. And I will guarantee you, I've had some very hard discussions, but I guarantee you a lot of those people will go, oh man, I didn't realize I'd have to give up on this. And that's what's so sad is it's like, we've instilled these beliefs in white people that they are entitled to certain things. And so even the people who have the right ideas, who are like, no, I don't believe this is right, still are hesitant to give up on certain privileges to help people who are literally dying and being murdered and suffering from the consequences of a system that was built against them.
All facts. Completely agree. Selena also added, I just wanted to say that state-sanctioned killing is cruel and unusual punishment and should have never been a thing. I don't know how people are okay with it. And yeah, it's just even more scary when you see like the statistics and how everything lines up and you see who it's really targeting. I was also going to add to Genesis's point. It's weird how in our society we think of everything as a zero-sum game. Like, I hate that. Why isn't it better if like we're all winning? That means we're all winning as a society. Like, if we help the poor, then our society will be better. If we do these things where everyone can win, it doesn't mean you have to lose. Like, we can just all win. Have you ever thought about that? So yeah, that's just what I thought about with like, the whole privileges talk is like a lot of people are so terrified of like losing their privilege because I guess, they've grown so used to like living with that privilege. But I think it's time that we have a society where we all, are seen as human beings. It's really not that hard. And I have hope that most of America feels that way. I guess we'll see with this next election. But thank you so much for your thoughts, Genesis. Did anybody else want to add? Z, did you have anything you want to add, or anybody on that topic? And then I'll show the video. Now, oh, Genesis again. We got one more comment.
I'm with my sister and she wanted to say something. So this is something coming from almost 16-year-old youth, Black youth.
Hi, cousin. And hi, everyone. I was just gonna say that, like, kind of like a little bit on the topic. I realized like a lot of stuff I do at school too, relating like BSU and things like that. I realized that a lot of people decide like opt out to do what's easy rather than even though it might be harder, was like better for people. And whether that's it's always easiest to like blame the like innocent Black man, right? Because people like that's just what people opt out to do, because they always believe like the white man over the Black man, like, or like whether that's like just like instead of like working hard to make something better for people, it's like that's harder to do than just like complaining about it or like saying all these things that's wrong, rather than just like trying to actually make it better for people. And that's pretty much it. It's really just like even though it might be hard and it's like not the easiest to do, you need to think about too that like it's like better for people, and like even for you and your kids, like and like things like for the later generations, like doing what's hard might not always doing what's easy might not always be right.
Period. That's such a good point, because we make so many cuts like in our justice system in the name of efficiency. Like, for example, the whole plea deal thing I'm talking about, like the system wouldn't operate if people didn't, accept plea deals. That just shows we do so many things in the name of efficiency, but these are people's lives. Like, I'm not comfortable with doing things in the name of efficiency for, people's lives. Like, we're holding people's lives in our hands. And so many of our policies that I've been learning about in law as well, and the way the police interact with the Black community and all the shortcuts they are able to take in the name of efficiency or officer safety is just insane to me, because like at the end of the day, the police are signing up for a job. We are not signing up for a job. So there are certain things that we're not going to cut in the name of efficiency or officer safety, because there's a level of danger that comes with doing the job, So yes, thank you so much, Juice, for sharing that youth perspective. Selena said some of these privileges are supposed to be rights that everyone should have. So sad that it's come to this point that disadvantaged, marginalized communities don't even have access to basic dignity and human rights. And that is real. Z had to dip out. Someone has to use the office she's in, but she said thanks for the great conversation. Thanks for her thoughts as well. And then Selena also said being treated with dignity and respect shouldn't be a privilege, it's a human right. And Genesis said agreed. So thank you guys so much for your thoughts. I'm just going to show this video to close this out. If you have to dip, no worries. I know this was a little bit of a longer session, but I'm really glad, because this is a topic I'm so passionate about, and I'm so passionate about changing. And yes, we're still trying to get that guest speaker for next time on the medical issues. If any of you guys know any Black people in the medical field, please send them my way, because that is a topic we haven't addressed yet on my Zoom that I would really like to talk about. But all right, I'm gonna share this video. Let's see. Those are my notes. Oh, yes. And the book, I'm sure you guys have all heard of it already, The New Jim Crow. I definitely recommend it in learning more about these topics and the effects in the Black community. Gonna share my sound again. Okay, it's still on. Perfect. All right, here we go.
Reinstated in 1976, more than 1,500 people have been executed by the United States government. In that time, 190 people who were sentenced to death have been exonerated. And right now, more than 2,400 people are sitting on death row in prisons throughout the US.
In a lot of ways, the death penalty functions as like a 15th century or a medieval solution to a very complicated set of 21st century problems. And the death penalty remains as inhumane as it ever has been.
So how do we get here? The use of the death penalty in the US can be traced back 400 years to the colonial period, brought to the colonies by European settlers. Laws on capital punishment varied from colony to colony, a foreshadowing of the state-by-state variation that exists today. By the mid-19th century, some states were beginning to question state executions. Still, capital punishment remained largely intact, but to some, the process wasn't efficient enough in exacting cruelty.
Lynch mobs often criticize the state-sanctioned execution processes as being slow and ineffective and costly, and therefore decided that they wanted to take a mechanism into their own hands and issue racial terror themselves.
This is Robert Ponce, an attorney and legal fellow with the ACLU Capital Punishment Project and the ACLU of Southern California.
The state saw the lynch mob as being a direct threat against their authority to issue physical domination and social control over its everyday citizens. And so the state's law enforcement and criminal punishment systems made it a mission to prove to the lynch mob and to society that they could exact retribution to wrongdoers accused of committing criminal offenses.
As lynchings declined in the early 1900s, state-sanctioned executions rose dramatically until the 1930s. Around that time, approximately 160 people were being put to death by the government each year. But these executions didn't have broad support. By the 1960s, public opinion in favor of the death penalty had dropped significantly. Gallup polls found that the amount of Americans in support of capital punishment declined from 62% in 1936 to 42% in 1966. In 1972, the Supreme Court issued a landmark decision that reflected public opinion. The court ruled in Furman versus Georgia that the death penalty was cruel and unusual punishment, which violated the Constitution. This ruling effectively suspended the death penalty nationwide.
In the Supreme Court's decision in Furman v. Georgia in 1972, the Supreme Court compared being issued a death sentence to being struck by lightning.
A justice on the majority of Furman wrote that it was unconstitutional for the death penalty to continue with a system that allows for executions to be so wantonly and so freakishly imposed. In other words, the Supreme Court saw the death penalty as arbitrary. After states imposed additional rules to supposedly eliminate its arbitrary use, capital punishment was reinstated in 1976, just 4 years later.
We hold that the statutory system under which Gregg was sentenced to death does not violate the Constitution.
Since then, more than 1,500 people have been executed across the country. Yet the death penalty continues to be arbitrarily applied. Whether or not someone lives or dies depends less on what they do and more on unrelated circumstances. Firstly, it varies depending on location. 26 states have abolished or placed a moratorium on the death penalty, but 24 states still enact capital punishment, and the decision to seek execution is up to local prosecutors. So whether or not you're sentenced to death could depend not only on what state you're in, but what side of the county line you're on.
5 counties in Texas and in Oklahoma are responsible for most of the executions that have taken place within the last several years.
It's not a coincidence that those states are in the South, where the Civil War-era lynch mobs that paved the way for capital punishment were most prevalent.
100 years ago, Black people accused of committing crimes against white people were among the primary targets of the lynch mob. Today, the death penalty system in the United States continues that trend.
In some states, those convicted of crimes against white people are significantly more likely to face the death penalty than those involved in cases with Black victims. Black defendants are 4 times more likely than white defendants to be sentenced to death. Black people also currently make up 41% of those on death row, despite representing only 13% of the general population. Additionally, Black people are 7.5 times more likely than white people to be wrongfully convicted of murder, yet they're more likely to face a longer imprisonment prior to being exonerated. Beyond the fact that the death penalty is sought and applied in a random, unjust manner, it's also really expensive.
When the Trump administration resumed federal executions after a 17-year hiatus, it cost $4.7 million to conduct the executions of the first 5 people executed during the summer of 2020.
There are several reasons why executions are so costly. On top of funding the prosecution and the judge, taxpayers often also cover the cost of the defense attorneys because many people facing death sentences can't afford their own legal representation. Additionally, capital trials are a lengthy process. They can be 4 times as long as a regular trial. And while those on death row are in prison, many are in solitary confinement, which is more expensive for departments of corrections than Gen Pop. What's more, everyone on death row is entitled to multiple appeals, which are complicated processes that can take decades.
One major thing about the immense financial costs of the death penalty is that so many people are wrongfully convicted and later have their sentences overturned on appeal.
So given everything we know about the arbitrary and discriminatory nature of the death penalty, who is it really serving?
Many victims' families don't want to have anything to do with an execution, much less to have the memories of their lost loved ones be continuously litigated in a court in a very public setting.
But there are still plenty of people who are in favor of capital punishment. As of 2022, 55% of Americans surveyed in a Gallup poll supported the death penalty.
There are many people within society who continue to advocate that the death penalty is necessary to exact retribution or justice, but the death penalty has never been about justice. It is about retribution, it's about vengeance, and some of our ugliest societal impulses and urges. But the death penalty's history tells no lies. It is a history of racial animus. It is a history of arbitrary application. It is a history of executing the most vulnerable people within society. And the death penalty remains as inhumane as it ever has been.
The US is one of the few democratic nations that still uses capital punishment. In fact, more than 70% of the world's nations have gotten rid of the death penalty. It's time Americans ask themselves, do we want to be a country that allows the government to arbitrarily decide who gets to live and who gets to die?
All right. Thank you guys so much for those who are still here, who watched the video. I thought it was really interesting because I had no clue where the origins of the death penalty started. But when you see it laid out like that, like the statistics all make a lot more sense, you know? And so I just hope after today, like we all do our part and, you know, trying to change something in these areas in our own capacity. Like it doesn't have to be like, you know, making it your career, but like a quote that I know is like, now that you know, you can't say, what is the quote? What is it? You can no longer say you don't know. You can only say you don't care. And I think with these discussions, like that definitely applies. Like we all should do our part in trying to change these things. It can feel overwhelming, but especially for me, because I'm just constantly like, oh my gosh, there's so many issues I need to tackle. There's so much I need to fix. Like there's so many problems with my community, but we don't have to take it all on at once, you know, and we don't have to take it all on our own. So that's just something I always try to keep in mind. Like a lot more people are trying to do this work and are seeing the injustices. And so that definitely gives me hope. Genesis said, yes, do what we can to support our own communities, stop contributing to the system. And then Selena said, spreading awareness is also extremely important, which I agree with all of those points. So yeah, thank you guys for listening today and for speaking your truth. Let me know if you have any other topics you want to see in the future. And I hope you all have a good night.